Welcome, my friends, back to the Fat Man GM, blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm spiel about Iron Crown Enterprises, Middle Earth, blah, 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 revisiting, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This particular source book slash game module, it's not a module, it is a source book. And traditionally, like most of their source books, it's very thin, but they pack a lot of material in it. One of the interesting things about this particular one here, the Court of Ardor. When I first started buying this stuff in the mid 80s, they'd already been in print for a couple of years. This particular one had a one run print at that time, sold out. I do not know that they ever printed another run on it. I never seen it again crop up on the shelves. And like a lot of game material, especially in the early days, they printed a limited run. And 10,000 copies. That sounds like a lot, but it's not when you look at how many of us are out there buying, even back then. So when I started buying this stuff, this kept cropping up because a lot of the first books had this list on the back. It's not on the back page of this one, but it was on the back page of a lot of others where it showed various books that had already been published. And Ardor was one, and it wasn't available on the bookshelf. It was sold out. Matter of fact, I asked Ivor, the owner of the game store, if he could back order it, and he attempted to do so, and they were out of stock, and they never resupplied it. Stocks never, they just never got another stock, a new run on the material. This was, of course, before we had the internet. Internet was very, very, very new in the 80s and very rare, very expensive. Matter of fact, I think it was late 80s or early 90s when I got my first internet access, and I was paying close to $3 an hour. I think it was crazy expensive. I had CompuServe, if anybody's familiar with what that was. Excuse me. CompuServe, and what the heck was that? Well, shortly after that, I went to American Online because it had a lot more functions. And a lot of you guys now go, "Oh, American," but you don't get it. It was the Cadillac of search engines of the day. It had lots of functions and lots of stuff tied together in a nice package, and it was fairly inexpensive compared to a lot of the others. And then, of course, in '96 or '97, it went flat rate, and I thought about overdosed on it when I no longer had to watch for my dollars. I know that there was 1 month alone. I think I ran up an $800 phone bill. Yeah, I know, I get it. Addiction can come in many forms. Anyway, back to the book, Ardor. So Ivor, who had a habit of going around to Midwestern conventions and setting up a seller's booth, a merchant's booth, kept an eye out for things like this, where he knew he had a customer that wanted something. He would put it down in a little notebook and just kind of go around. And if he spotted it, he remembered me and he bought it and brought it back to me and sold it to me at the cost he paid for it, which was, about, actually, I think it was $1 less than what the face value of the book was at the time. But it was used because somebody had already, put some crib notes and stuff on the top cover. And, I'll tell you, it says here, second longest module, right, according to this person's crib notes. He couldn't quite agree on the levels. It starts out at levels 3+, but the average encounter is 14th level. So it shows you that they set out, this was to be a Lulu when they set out for it. Okay. Basically, Ardor was established in the very southern section of Middle Earth. To show you a nice map of Middle Earth, and it's right down here. Okay, this is and I'm not even going to try to. Yes, I am. I'm going to try to pronounce it because that's what I do. When I butcher it, you laugh, and it's good. It's okay. Laugh all you want. At least I'm trying. The Mumakan, right? Okay. This is the place, the land, where those big, huge, walking, giant elephants, the olephants, as Sam so, adroitly called them, originate from, and their people. So those people came from all the way down there to go fight in Sauron's war against Gondor for their own reasons. Now, Ardor was one of these. Ardor was one of these kingdoms that was established in the Second Age, long before Arnor and Gondor showed up, even before Nurmber existed. Matter of fact, according to the backstory, it was set when Morgroth was still holding sway. This was where the elves, before he killed the trees, and the elves took off to get their Silmarillions back. It's really old, right? Yeah. And it was established by elves, an elvish kingdom that turned south bad, right? The chief leaders were all elves, and they're still here in the book, most because some of them still exist. And technically speaking, this place still exists and is still ruled by these people. You know, a nice, beautiful color map that I never took out. It goes in here. I mean, I never left it get separated from the book. This is one of the only ones I have never played or utilized because it's complicated. For what it is very complicated. It goes through the typical, the inhabitants, the elves, the Hathorns, the hillmen, and so on and so forth, the countries, various towns and cities, and back information. There's some weird card thing, like a Cards of Fate kind of tie in here. Here's an example. Each card represents one of these immortal lords, if you will, and or their chief flunkies. The Lord of Fire of Staves, the Lords of Water of Helms, the Lords of Earth of Orbs, etc. Okay, and it goes on for about 5 or 6 pages of this stuff. See, there's another card. And frankly, I'm not overly sure. Never was quite sure exactly how that played into it, other than this is the quite detailed information on these characters. And very few of these characters are below 20th level. So, makes them pretty tough. Yeah, the Cards of Ardana. Much lore has been written about concerning the powers of the Ardan deck, blah, blah, blah. Seemed like I said, it reminds me of the deck of Fate or something. There's a deck or two that float around in the old D&D treasure books and stuff, in the back of the DM guide, and I think this kind of plays into one of those sort of things. Other organizations of note, so on and so forth. The economy, some maps and some labyrinths of buildings, some castles and lairs and so on and so forth. Right? Some weird temple complexes. See, there you go. A little weird. Yeah, there. And you can see that weird, strange pyramid-looking substructures. Ah. Right there. Right. Okay. So, basically, these Sylvan elves, they never make it west, so you can call them dark elves if you want, are very powerful for their kind of elf. Usually most Sylvan elves, most of the wild elves or the green elves or what have you, do not develop to the level that the Noldor did. And these are rivals for Galadriel and Elrond of the First Order. But there's only a handful of them. Lion's share of their elves have elven followers. Majority of them gradually migrated west and eventually went to the Undying Lands. So there's still a small cadre of elves. Mostly when the second-born when man arrived, they supplement or supplanted most of the elvish followers and servants and common whatever you want to call for these high lords, and the majority of the elven population either diminished as they do or went west. And there you go. Now, it's a very Machiavellian kind of play. There's a lot of politics involved. The real struggle for me, and I think this is why I never played it with players or never tried to approach it for play. First off, it's very, very far away from Gondor and Arnor, very far. Second, it is the how do you get player characters, majority of which are established in Arnor or Gondor, to come all the way this way and then do something? What's their purpose? Or if they come here on a quest to obtain some lost artifact or something, okay, then they're not going to encounter these people directly. They're going to encounter their agents or their flunkies or their followers, or hopefully, maybe they encounter one or two of these people. If they come here as ambassadors from Gondor or Arnor or someplace out west, then okay, now you're playing a different style of game. And I've played games like that. I've run them, and they're interesting games, but you need some really the right kind of players to play off that kind of game. You know, they talk about Game of Thrones. Well, Game of Thrones, for all intents and purposes, is still a bunch of hack and slash. Now, if you're playing one of the key personas, where you're trying to be another king, and you've got to deal with all your other BS, that's another animal. Real rough, real tough to do. It's a challenge, and I'm saying that most of you are probably up to it. You should try it if you can get your hands on it. From a collector standpoint, this thing here is a holy grail, as far as I'm concerned. It is one of the hardest to get, or it was. Now, with the advent of the internet and Google, who knows? Maybe there's 50 copies of this out there being sold by nuts like me. I don't know. I haven't looked, and I'm being honest, I haven't looked. I just know that what Ivor and I went through to get this thing in 80, 85, 86. So it was rough. It was hard. And it is the way it worked back then. You guys got it easy now, you younger folks. If you're looking for a very complicated setting, this one will do, right? You can run entire campaigns just off this one book. That's a complicated setup. So if you want characters to develop in the local, region, who rise up to deal with or run afoul of these high elvish lords, then these dark elf lords, if you will, it's a good way to do it. Bring them in from the far west, still doable. If we had the source book material for Nurmur, which they never got around to creating, which is kind of sad, because I think that would have been an interesting time period to play. You could have had them as ambassadors or envoys from the court of Nurmur, who was a very powerful nation of its day. It was Britain of its day. It literally, the sun didn't set on its kingdom. It had established and was in the process of establishing colonies all over Middle Earth. So you could play it that route. Good thing. Like I said, Court of Ardor, probably one of the most complex so-called modules I've ever encountered. And this goes for every game system I've ever played. There you have it.